No, I think it's gonna be
All right. Okay, we have some really interesting products here. Blue Spark Innovation.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, you're good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry. Good. Was it now? Is it evening? Yes. Good evening.
It's evening, yeah.
Sorry, let me turn on my
Evening,
camera so
yeah.
that we communicate. Is it okay if once in a while we just turn on our camera so that we all say hellos to each other? Um, when we is that okay?
That's good.
All right. And I would really like to start from that point, saying hellos to a couple of us. So, if it's okay, please let's just turn on our cameras and say hellos um, to one another. It's good if you can, anyways. If you cannot, we will not have you do that. Hello, Ibrahim, Ghana, Jeremiah, Arinola, Jesse, Tony, Kudos, Melissa, Nafisat, Officia, Oge, Cynthia. Uh, you're laughing. All right, hi. First off, I think it's good to be here. We're going to be talking quite a little or a lot, depending on how fast we can go with the conversation, right? We're going to be talking quite a little on the conversations or a couple of conversations around startups and how things run in this space. I'm trying as much as I can to. I may be a little delayed. Cynthia, is it okay if I share my slides for you to run it for me? Is it
Yeah, sure,
possible?
you can. Yeah, you can email that to.
That is possible. I'll do that in 2 seconds. All right. While we're doing that back end, I would like you to put the industry you are or what you're building on the chat box quickly, so we can direct our conversation briefly or more purposefully. All right.
I see a fintech company here. Payment system. That's up there. Okay. Then we have Don Black. Okay, that's two companies. Is it the same company? Okay. Then there's healthcare here. That's great. We have an NGO as well. I see fashion tech. That's interesting.
Oh, beautiful.
Tech and health tech is also here as well. That's good. What's your documents? So we can proceed.
Okay. That's good to hear. I'd like to stop sharing so you can do that more effectively,
Yeah.
or someone from your team. That'll be better. Just give me a second. Maybe some of us can. My laptop is a little low, so it's slowing down, sort of. Um, and I don't want this to be a problem for us as we go. Cynthia, please let me know when you're up.
Sure.
All right, while we do that, my name is Wisdom John, and very quickly, we're going to look at, I'll try as much as possible to be fast. It's not a very long slide. Very quickly, we're going to be looking at the law surrounding businesses, startups primarily, and all of the things startups do to be startups, all of the things startups do to succeed, all of the things startups do to grow, all of the things that of startups do to be profitable, right? And beautifully, this is a an early stage conversation for startup, or an early stage conversation for startups. All right, I can see Toby's message. Just give me a second. I'll get what you want across to you. Right. All right. Briefly, this is an early stage conversation for us as startups in the space. So um we'll run through fundamentals, what we need to know at this stage of our businesses before we go. I would like to start by introducing myself. My name is Wisdom John. Um, our host have mentioned that already. My name is Wisdom John. I'm a lawyer here in Nigeria. I work across the business and transaction law space. I primarily focus on startups and startup and technology law practice. So if you are in the tech space, you are a startup, you are requiring people who are requiring proper legal compliance, people who are in the policy space, you're very likely going to come across me or what I do as you do what you do. Yes, I founded Logic a couple of years ago, and one of the things we do is to try and get try and ensure founders do what founders do, which is chase the bag. I hope everyone can hear me.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
You
All
can
right.
also see the
All right.
slides, right?
Sure.
Um,
Please.
Okay.
All right. My goal is to ensure startups do what startups do, founders do what founders do, while we um, try as much as we can to free you time to go pursue the business, grow your business while we take care of the law for you. All right. We'll keep you compliant while you grow your business. And that's one of the things we do. Please let me know if the slides are up so that I can proceed. I want them to see, I want us to be seeing it while we go.
It's
Um,
up. Can you see it?
it's up. All right. If it's up, then I shouldn't be worried.
Can you
Um,
guys see it though? Am I the only one?
Yes, we can see the slide.
Okay. Perfect.
okay. I can't. That's why I'm asking.
I can't see a slide though.
I
You can
can't.
see the
That's why
slide.
I'm asking.
I
Oh,
can't
Is it
see the
not the
slide
blue
also.
background and the green envelope? Dear early stage
yes.
founders. Yes, I can
Yes.
see the slide.
Please. Okay. Let
All
me
right.
see if maybe it's
Can that be the primary slide?
okay.
That looks like it is not the first. We can make that the first.
Okay.
Uh,
Can you see it
can
now?
pin it. I think if you pin it, it will become bigger.
Yeah, I've done that.
All right.
Can
All
you
right.
see it?
Ladies and gentlemen, you can pin yours too so that we can hit it running.
But
All
wisdom,
right.
you can see it, right?
I can. I'm fine. I
Okay.
can see
All right.
it. So yeah.
Perfect.
Can we just as fast as we can? Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. It will be faster for us to move. Thank you. Next slide. This is what we're going to be talking about, from formation and structure of your startups to intellectual property, contract and agreement, fundraising and investor relation, data privacy and security, compliance and regulatory matter, dispute resolution and legal challenges. And then we quickly open the house for a quick conversation, for a beautiful conversation, and I dare say. Um, I would like next slide, please. If you can do me well to be fast as soon as I'm done. Yes. Okay, I've asked this question. I wanted to know what our interests are on the group. All right, formation and structure. I'll start with formation and structure. And I want to start with formation and structure because this is a conversation that everybody should know, but not everybody concerned. Everybody should know, but not everybody concerned themselves enough with it. By show of hands, let me see if your business is registered on the chat box. I'll be looking on the chat box now. If your company is registered, please just show hands on the chat box and let's see. By show of hands, I can see hand. I can see I can see Bashir's hand. I can see Adiola's hands, Ibrahim Ghana's hands. 3 hands there. There are quite a number of us, but I can see 3 hands raised. I can see a fourth hand, Stephen. A couple of us, yeah, and that's good. And and one of the things we should identify when we decide to start a company is to get it regulated. And the first stage to company regulations in Nigeria is company registrations. So, um, of course, we all know. Maybe I would not want to assume we know how company is registered or the structure that company registration takes in Nigeria. Let me be sure my laptop is charging so it doesn't die while we're at this. All right. So the assumption is we already know that, but if you don't, a sole proprietorship, if you have an enterprise or a business name as it is called, it's not a good fit for startups. If you have a limited liability company, it's ideal for startups, and I'll tell you why. If you have a limited partnership, it is not ideal for startups. If you have an incorporated trustee, to an extent, it's ideal for startups. To an extent, and I say to an extent because for those persons who are not profit based, but startups are primarily profit based. So if you're not profit based, you say, okay, this is what I do. This is the extent to which I do it, and all of that. Um, but if you're not profit based, then you can begin to do things around that area and seek funds somewhere. But yes, choosing the right legal entity would require that you set up a limited liability company, and that's because it is more startup friendly. Any investor, and when we talk startups, we mostly will come around talking investment, right? Any investor who wants to bring money to your table, who wants to be sure he's going to make profits, and for a company who's not profit based, which is not profit based, or a company who is owned by an individual, may not give the investor that kind of confidence to put money in the company. Can we go to the next slide and be fast about it, and so that we can run? All right. Next, formation and structure still. Incorporation process would require you to register your company with the Corporate Affairs Commission. If you have not, please do well to do that. I think that's a good way to say it. If you haven't registered your company with the Corporate Affairs Commissions already, please do well to do that. It is mandatory for every company who carries on business in Nigeria to register with Corporate Affairs Commission at least 28 days after commencement of business. So for whatever it's worth, the moment you realize that your business you are beginning to think it and you want to actually get this done, you should begin to think incorporation immediately. So do that, and you register. The law regulating is Companies and Allied Matters Act. And then the requirement for registration is simple. All of these are basic, so I'll skim through them. Your details as a shareholder, the details of the directors, details of witness, and details of the company. Those are the primary things that will be required. Please, next slide, will be required for registration. Now, I'm going to be touching on a lot of things because we have to be fast. The next thing you want to consider, if you notice from our table of content, the next thing you want to consider as a startup, especially as an early stage startup, is to consider your founder's agreement, especially if you're not alone in the business, is to consider your founder's agreement. I'll discuss this a little more down the line, but because it is one of the first steps you should take. As a matter of fact, most times the conversations around founders agreement starts even before incorporation. You should begin, especially if you're not an independent founder, you should begin to discuss conversations around founders agreements, right? What exactly would be the terms governing our relationship? How will our relationship run as business owners or as business people? What do we need to do? All of those things, our role, responsibility, who has what IP. And I think the important clauses are listed there already. I listed important clauses already. Who has what IP? And IP is intellectual property. I'm building. If I'm the one building, if I'm the one who builds this thing, is it mine or is it ours? That is a very important thing to determine at the early stage. Is it mine or is it ours? Do we jointly own it, or is it something that I own as an individual? I've built this platform. I've built this app. Is it my own or is it our own? I designed this thing? Is it mine or is it ours? How do we resolve disputes? If it's not an individual, if it is not individual ownership, how do we resolve disputes? What kind of dispute do we anticipate? What is the capital contribution? We're contributing money to start this company. How much are we contributing? How do we make decisions? All right. Ownership structure. What percentage of the company? I think this is one people like. I own 20% of the company. I own 20% interest in this. I own 20% interest in that. What percentage of the company do I own? Do each individual owner own or holder own in the company, right? And all the other clauses that are important, you see them, they're exit clauses, your exit clauses, because startups are like marriage, especially for multiple co-founders. Startups are like marriage. Not necessarily marriage, because I believe marriage should be for better or worse. But startups are like relationships, right? You get into talking stage and you try. Sometimes you even get into the relationship, but maybe the sweet by and by did not work out, and you shake hands and you say, see, I'm still your friend, or I'm no longer your friend, whatever the case is, I'm out. All right. So what is the exit clause when we decide to go out? If we decide to go out, to split, how do we do that? What's the relationship surrounding a determination? All right, when we end our relationship, how should it be? Next slide, please, so that we're fast. All right, so these are the things you should be considering when you're thinking startups. Next thing is founders, and then when we talk about founders' responsibilities in the previous slide, these are the things you should be thinking. Corporate governance, how should this company be structured? What are the things that are required by law for this kind of company in the sector we are? We're in fintech. What does the law require from fintech for the structure of a fintech to look like? Right? You want to begin to think that apart from the law, what is usual for the space we are in? All right, you want to begin to think that, so that you can incorporate that into your operations. You can incorporate that into your founders agreement as well. Fiduciary relationship, IP, of course, the employment compliance. These are the things that founders are responsible for. All right, you as a founder will be the one to look out for these things, to sort them out. All right, employment and compliance, employment law and compliance. It will be your responsibility. I, as a lawyer, as a startup lawyer, will not come and knock at your door and say, let me do this for you. All right, you'll be the one to most likely sort that out. We can come to you, right, and tell you, oh, these are the things you're having, these are the issues you're having, these are loopholes. Let's reach an arrangement to fix that for you, right? But it is primarily your responsibility, because the company will rise or fall at your instance. So as a startup founder, you begin to think these things and think them at an early stage. Glory to God. All right, next slide, please. So that we can fast. Yes, other things are taxes, issues around taxes. It will be your responsibility primarily. Contract liabilities with respect to internal and external. All right, internal and external liabilities first, and then liabilities as an individual. See, why a limited liability company, your liability is limited as a founder or as a shareholder. Why your liability is limited? Where in circumstances where you guarantee certain things personally, those liability or your liability will not be limited. It will be limited only to the extent that the company structure allows or your shareholding allows. But everything you have personally guaranteed will be something you're liable for. So you want to look out for that. And I say that to say this, especially as a founder, when you're negotiating things or when you're looking for money, you're thinking things. Don't say, I promise you. Don't enter an agreement promising. See, if I'm on the investor part of a transaction, all right? If I'm on the investor part of the transaction, or not just necessarily investor, the other part of the, let's say, vendor part of the transaction, or whatever transaction that involves the founder, and I realized that the founder's company doesn't have enough traction to sustain their promises when they are giving me that promise. I'm very likely going to rope, and this is from a transaction point, right? I'm very likely going to rope the founder in, and for good reason, because the goal is to ensure that whoever I'm representing gets the best out of their relationship with you. So I'm very going to rope you in, so that when your liability ends as a company and the company can no longer do good its obligation, we can hold the individual founder. All right. So as a founder, it's important that you're very careful not to personally guarantee certain things, because some persons like us might be on the other side advising somebody. So you're very careful to be if you don't want, it is your responsibility to look out for such things that will rope you in and begin to see how you can reduce your liability. And that's why we're going to the next stage, the next slide, where we talk about how to reduce your liability as a founder. All right, how to reduce your liability, how to reduce your exposure. Number one, adopt bylaws, right? Adopt, and I say adopt bylaws for a very good reason. You want, as a founder, especially for multiple founders, or especially for founders who have a team already, you want to, whether you're early stage or not, you want to adopt bylaws that detail your operations, your standard operating procedures, right? So that you will know who is liable. We can pin liability to, if I tell you this is how we are supposed to operate as a company, and you don't operate that way, and the bylaw says that if you flout these bylaws and do not operate in these specific manners, and issues XYZ happens, you'll be liable for it. We can push liability to individuals than the entire company suffering. Glory to God. All right. Sorry, apologies. I'm saying glory to God. It's force of habit, right? Next is insurance policies. Take insurance policies as best as you can. Take insurance policies as best as you can, especially if you operate in a volatile industry. Fintech, for instance. As a matter of fact, you will not start a fintech except you're insured to a very large extent. All right. If you're doing fintech and you're beginning to get into the meat of it, part of the issues that is going to be that is established for you to deal with is insurance. And the central bank, the all insurance commissions in Nigeria, all insurance bodies, whether primary or secondary insurance bodies, and I say that in broad sense because there are quite a number of people operating depending on the sector you are. Every insurance body will ensure that, especially for finance, the finance space. As a matter of fact, even from your incorporation, they want to know that you have specific insurance covered. Next is corporate formalities. You want to go back to your books or to your operations from time to time to ensure that procedures are being followed, and this is the way you reduce your exposure. Next is contract. Do contract for everything. All right, it might look very little. I'm just starting, I don't need this for now. You think you don't, but you might. So whatever the case is, you might not have a lawyer, and I want to say this very loosely, you might not have the money to pay a lawyer yet if you're a very early stage startup, but you can do the basics by communicating via mail than communicating via telephone, by chatting and agreeing on things. So if we talk on the phone and I agree on every XYZ, I'm going to follow it up by mail and tell you, oh, we following our previous conversation on XYZ, this and this and this are what we've agreed on. Please confirm that these details are correct and are in line with our agreement. And you say confirm. Once you confirm it, that is an operation or an operative contract that you can use. At least it might not have all the trappings of a proper contract, but it is something that is enforceable. So to guide yourself against exposure, you want to enter contract for almost everything you can. Next slide. And one of the things we're going to start talking about quickly because it concerns us is intellectual property. You will have to understand that as a startup, everybody can do what you can do, but not everybody has the brain and has structured that thing the way it should. We understand how Elon is already suing Mark for intellectual property infringements, the whole Twitter and Thread issue, right? And Elon Musk is not suing. Elon Musk is not suing Mark just because he wants to. The basis of that lawsuit is intellectual property. The reason I can say, hey, shut down, you are stealing from me, is not necessarily because you came to my house with a gun. It's because you copied something that is mine. You took something that is mine, or a structure, a system that is mine, that I have properly protected intellectual, a property I have properly protected. And now one thing I want to mention, which I believe we know from the name intellectual property, is that it is not a physical right. All right, intellectual properties are not physical properties. They are mind properties, properties that are intangible. It's not something you can see, handle, or hold. And they are your brain work. But this is the difference between, and I must clearly delineate here, is intellectual properties are not all properties. They are properties that have gone from your mind to a communicated form. All right. The fact that you think it doesn't mean you own it. A million another one and one other persons are thinking it until it is communicated in a form that becomes tangible and it is registered. In some instances, you don't have a right to that property. All right. And I'm going to outline a couple of types for us. Maybe in the next slide, please, let's go to the next slide. Outline a couple of types of intellectual property for us as startups. One is trademark, two is copyright, patent, and trade secrets. And these are the primary rights that govern that you see a lot around intellectual property. For trademarks are, as it says, as it sounds, trademark. They are distinguishing mark. If you see an Apple product, you will know anywhere because a mark that identifies Apple is associated with this product. If you see McDonald's anywhere, is it McDonald's now? Anywhere, you will know. If you see Burger King anywhere, you will know. All right. If you see Twitter anywhere, you will know that this is a Twitter product or this is Twitter because of the mark, the words, the name, the phrases, the color, the logo. All of these things are things you can trademark. So as a startup, begin to think, even from your conception stage, begin to think your design as something that is a property for me. Recently, a startup was folding. Which was the name of the startup that was folding in Nigeria and wanted to sell off their IP? I think
That's
the
sorry? Crypto company.
Yes, then the crypto space. What's the name?
LaserPay.
LaserPay. Right. Good, thank you. LaserPay could do that because they have intellectual property that is protected, and I will tell you some of them or some of the things that they probably are trying to sell. Maybe not their logo. Maybe somebody don't want their logo. Maybe somebody don't want their color. Maybe somebody don't want their symbol and their catchphrase. But guess what? Somebody wants their software, and that's where copyright comes in. They've copyrighted probably their software. All right. They probably built a software that is unique, that is beautiful, and they copyrighted that software, the design, those codes. They've copyrighted it, so that's probably what they want to sell. All right, and that's another way to protect or to protect your intellectual property, to copyright things that can be copyrighted, from movies to software to song, music. Those of us who are in the music tech space or are building startups around music. I think I saw one where we started. People who are in the literary workspace and you're building a company around that, you want to copyright things. If you go to Amazon Books, while it's an open market space, there are specific products that are. Do you think Netflix movies are just there and just have the tag Netflix for the sake of it? No, all of the movies that are Netflix originals are copyrighted movies. All right, so you want to copyright your work once you begin to build them, because this is literally the money. When an investor comes to you eventually, they're not coming to you because of so many things. They are coming to you because of the properties you have, just in case this does not profit. Or it is a understand that as an early stage startup, you are a gamble. All right, any investor who is coming to you is gambling, and at best, what will inform their decision in that gamble is the kind of structure you've set up. Should I gamble with? If I come and I tell you I don't have any products yet, I haven't designed, I don't have a minimum viable product yet, but I have intellectual property secured on all of these things. That enough is reason for me to invest in you. The reason why is, even if your company does not fly at the end of the day, all of those intellectual properties are monies for us as now equity holders or investors in the company. We can now jointly say, okay, let's look for people to sell this to and make money and distribute amongst ourselves as founders. Next is patent. Of course, patents are inventions and designs. That's where if you invent something, it's unique, it's new. I have somebody who is in a couple of clients who are inventing something really groundbreaking in the power sector currently. And boy, oh boy, if that blows up and gets the pending patent out and that blows up, it is billions and billions for those individuals. And maybe that's where I'll blow from. Glory, amen. All right, next is trade secrets. Trade secrets, we already know what trade secrets are. I believe we know what trade secrets as the names are imply. Name 5 persons who have tried. You will see 101 soft drink carbonated drink product, but none of them taste like Coca-Cola. The reason none of them taste like Coca-Cola is because Coca-Cola is protecting their trade secrets. Across almost every chicken republic that you know is a simple one to understand. Their chicken tastes probably the same. It's because they have a recipe that they are protecting. I'll tell you how to protect all of these things. For instance, trade secrets, you don't protect trade secrets by patenting it or by copyrighting it or trademarking it as such. You protect trade secrets sometimes by copyright, but more importantly by contracts. All right. Next is steps to safeguarding startup IP assets. Number one, register everything. I've told you, if you have a product, a design or whatever, register your trademark, register your copyright, register your patent, register everything early. It's one thing to register. Some of my teammates are on this call. I think 2 of my teammates should be on this call. One of the meetings we had just before this meeting with one of my teammates is we were trademarking a particular product for a client, and she has done her business far off, right? Her business is maybe 5 years now, and then she realized that there are like 5 other people who are using the name on socials, and then she now wants to trademark. And we've discussed this before, but she now wants to trademark. But guess what? We did a search on it, and just yesterday, result came out that somebody else since 2001 has trademarked that exact name. So right now, the next thing you will see that will happen to her, she will put on social media, we are rebranding, because she can't. It's either she go buys off the rights from that person, or she changes her own because somebody already have ownership to that name. The fact that you register your company alone does not make it yours in the sense. The company is yours, but the name is not yours. Somebody who has the name can come knock at your door, and then there are, of course, what's it called? Criteria for every trademark. But yes, trademark everything and trademark them early, or register everything and register them early. 2, document everything. I've talked to us about contracts already, which I'll still talk down the line. Document everything. Number 3, get a goddamn lawyer, please. If you don't have money, be friends with one. At least they'll give you a discount or something. But yeah, that's an important point for us. Next, NDAs. And please go to the next slide. 1. Another primary way to protect your intellectual properties is to sign non-disclosure with everybody. See, if you're going to pitch your idea, this is early stage startup conversation. If you're going to pitch your idea, so much as pitching your ideas, all right? If you're sending the documents, and for them to please, especially when you're sending the document, include a non-disclosure agreement or a non-disclosure clause. They don't have a right to disclose. They can't use it, and they should not disclose. All right, because this is important. NDAs protect sensitive information and trade secrets. You don't want to go and share this with people, even your team, and we'll get to that. Even your team, even the people who are employed in your space, and that would lead us to the next slide, which we're talking about for early stage startup. I mentioned sign agreement for everything. Please, let's get to the next slide if we can. Please let me know where you're there. I can see that we're not moved on the slide yet. All right, but the next slide is for contracts. All right, exactly. Thank you very much. Contracts. The next slide, essentials of a startup contract. Now, when you want to set up essential contracts for startups, because you will need contracts for everything, it's important that I begin to highlight some of the primary contracts you should need. So one of the things you can do now is take a screenshot of this page, because there are things that you'll be required down the line. I'll just explain a couple of them so that we can fly. Number 1, co-founders agreement, and I've told you this before. Even before you start registering your company, begin to think co-founders agreement. Maybe I'll list a couple of things down the line that will be included in your co-founders agreement. All right. Next is non-disclosure agreement. I've told you non-disclosure agreement is just saying, hey, you can see what we're doing. You can't say shit. You can't say jack about it. All right. Employment agreement. If you already are building a team, don't build a team without entering contracts with them. All right. Don't build a team without entering contracts with them. Next is independent contractors agreement. And this is for people who are building teams and are employing, let's say, developers. All right. You're employing a developer. You're not a developer, but you're a founder. You've employed a developer. You want to enter an independent contractor agreement with that person and say, hey, you're going to build this for me. What exactly are you building? What is the timeline? When is the deliverable? What is the expectation from this? What is the result we're expecting? Who owns this product after you've built it? That is an important thing, right? Because what law is and what is understood by people are two different things. All right. If I'm a photographer, let me use photography because it's a simple example. If I'm a photographer and you walk into my studio and I snap your picture and you take it and you go and post it for your birthday shoot or whatever, if you see that picture on Shutterstock or Unsplash or one of those open source places where you see pictures tomorrow, don't come to my doors to knock because I own rights to that picture. All right. I own, depending on the kind of arrangement we have. So if an independent contractor is coming and you're doing stuff like that, you do not own the right to the work except you expressly state in contract that, see, this code that you are developing, you are building this code, you are writing it. After you finish writing it, you hand over as my property. As a founder, you have to do that. It is the company's property. Next is service agreements. You're reaching in the startup space, right? There's not one person that has it all figured out. So most times we bank on people. Piggyverse can be using a banking license of another company, of another business, of a conventional bank. You will see pick any startups, any fintech, and I'll point you to the license they are using. It's probably not theirs. Most of them have. If you log on Piggyverse and you check your bank account, you realize that it's a Wema bank. What is Piggyverse and Wema has? What does Piggyverse and Wema have in connection when they are both finance companies independently, right? This is what they have in connection. It's service agreement. You're going to provide me this while I'm doing this. You're going to provide me this and take this percentage of all my transaction, or this amount upfront, or this amount monthly, or this amount yearly, whatever the arrangement is. And then that agreement guides what you're going to do down the line. Now, in terms of service, you already know that your platform, your operations, especially people who have users, should have term of services and privacy policy. We'll talk about privacy a little bit down the line. Licensing agreements, investor agreements. All right, you're an early stage startup. You want to be thinking investors. If you're going to think investor down the line, or if you started thinking of it, and you should start thinking of agreements. And this will require you to draft or write or prepare term sheets, to require you to prepare safe. For those of us who are just starting and are in the idea stage, you want to prepare simple agreement for future equity. You're not giving equity to anybody yet, but you're saying, hey, when you have paid us this amount of money, when we need to give out equity, this is what this and this and this and this is how you guide the distribution or disbursement of equity to you. All right, shareholders agreement between your shareholder and all of that. And then vendors I think we've talked about this well enough. Key terms that should be in a contract: parties clause, responsibilities of both parties. I just want to highlight one particularly here, which is termination/exit clause. Terminations, like I think we've talked about a lot of all of these things already, so I'll just talk about termination and exit clause. Key terms in a contract. This is not the slide I am. Key terms in a contract. All right, yes, termination and exit clause. Now, I mentioned this earlier, that the fact that you are a startup doesn't mean you are bound together forever. All right, you're in a relationship, you're not married yet, and even when you're married people still get divorced. It will get to a point where there might be problem down the line. There's troubled water, you want to leave. What is going to guide our separation? Because you don't want it to be messy. All right, you want to be able to shake hands and walk away. The reason Iyi Aboyeji could walk away from what's it called?
Flutterwave.
Flutterwave is because they have an exit clause that allows that. All right. The reason why some of the co-founders or earlier co-founders could walk away when they wanted to walk away is because they have an exit clause that and then you don't hear it until maybe after a while, or after they announce it that they are leaving. All right. Whatever the reason for leaving is not important. What is important is the company did not crash when they leave, or when one person left, and it's because they have a properly structured and effective exit clause. And this exit clause also works for not just founders and co-founders, but also investors, people who have come in and wants to leave. How do they leave? Is it through a buyout? Is it through a buyback option? Is it a buyout? Are we buying off your shares, or do we allow you to sell them based off certain restrictions and all of that? All right, next slide. We're going to talk about funding a little bit, and we're running out of time, so I'm trying to be very fast. We're going to talk about funding and investment a little bit. What kind of funding can I
No,
get?
you can take a little more time because this is really fire.
All right. Thank you very much. And yes, I hope I'm not boring everybody. Please, if I am, feel free to.
Boring how?
Feel free to get a cup of water. One is very far from me. I actually want to turn on my air condition because we started this this meeting without what's it called, light, without power, and power has come now. I need to just quickly, but I'll be here talking while we're doing that. Next conversation is, what kind of funding do we get as startups at this stage? What kind of funding are we looking at? What, in fact, since we're early stage startups, right? Since we're an early stage startup, what kind of funding should we be thinking when we're thinking funding? What kind of funding should we be thinking? Should we be thinking every kind of funding or specific kind of funding? And I want to start there because I want to start from there because it will lead us to other conversation. And then, what do I need to consider when looking for money? What kind of agreement do I need when I'm raising those money? It doesn't matter what kind of money it is I'm raising, but what kind of agreement do I need when I'm doing that? And that brings us to the next slide. At the early stage of your startup, your primary funding pathways will be you bootstrapping. I think all of us know that here. Majority of us are probably bootstrapping right now, right? It will be you handling all the business by yourself. Your money coming from your pocket, borrowing, lending, breaking your piggy vest or piggy bank to just push things, to do this, to pay developer, to pay staff, the handful of staff that are already available, right? And then next you want to start thinking, okay, friends and family. And this is where F&F round comes in. Most persons begin to raise at this point gradually. And of course, this is basic raising, right? You're just friends and family pool resources. Some will give you for free, trust me, without equity. Some will not give you for free, quite frankly. Some will require that you give them equity down the line, and this is where the SAFE we spoke about came up, or a couple of other instruments you can use, whether equity instrument or debt instrument. And then there's equity crowdfunding. Also, you can get money from upon certain restrictions. You can get money from the general public. And then, of course, down the line, you begin to think venture capital, or you begin to raise institutional funding, right? And some of the things you should think when raising funding at an early stage is, one, securities law. And I started with that because fundraising is something that the law is very wary of. The law doesn't want you to just please, next slide, if you've not gone to the next slide already. The law does not, regulators don't just want you to wake up one morning and say, I have a company and everybody bring money. The goal of regulators is first to protect companies, right? It's first to protect individuals or the public. So if you raise up your head and say, I have a company and everybody should bring money, or XYZ bring me money, the regulators want to see what kind of companies you have operating, and what sector is it, who is regulating that sector, what can you do, what can't you do. The fact that you are raising money doesn't mean you can knock on everybody's door. All right, you have to consider what law is guiding your sector. If you're in the fintech space, you cannot just raise money anyhow. All right, you cannot raise money from public. Let's say you've not IPO'd, or you're not even at the stage of IPO. In fact, you want to start raising money from public. Even though it's equity crowdfunding, there are quite a lot of restrictions that will choke your neck. Right. Next, you want to talk about investment agreements, and I want to say this particular one from the point of an investor, and not just investment agreement. You want to understand that investor will require certain things. I'm currently preparing a SAFE for someone who is raising F&F, right? And while he does not know the conversations or the issues around this early stage investment, I had to take time to say, hey, if you're going to do this, these are the kind of clauses that should be in. This is the way you should negotiate this. Are you going to give this person discount rates later on? Is this person, when does this your safe convert into equity? At what event will be a completion event or a conversion event for you? Is it at your next raise, or is it at a sale, or dissolution, as it were? What exactly would amount to? Do you understand the point, right? So you want to be able to look at that with your investor very holistically. Next is due diligence, and this is also from an investor point of view, which ties up all of the things we've been saying. Everybody who wants to give you money will look into your books. There's no magic about it, all right? You're going to be naked, and that is when we'll begin to see if you have been compliant all the while. It is here we begin to see if you have been compliant all the while. If you have been, if you have registered your company, if you registered your company under a proper or ideal structure for the kind of space you are, if the shareholding requirement is at par with what should be, if you have all the necessary licenses that are required for your industry, if you have all the agreements necessary with every party that you should have agreements with, if you all of the things that you need to do as a startup to set up all the things we've been discussing down the line, right? If you have them sorted out already, they will look into them. How have you been spending your money? Have money been paid over time into your personal accounts? Company money is routing through your personal account and all of those things. They'll see all of those things, and they will determine whether money comes to you or not. Trust me, an investor will naked you. You'll be naked in front of the world, and at least your company will. So you want to be very observant of things like this. Investment protection. What kind of protection do I give to this investor, right? Intellectual property, we've talked about that already. Anti-dilution provisions. When do I dilute? Who should be diluted? Get the point. Every investor that knows his onions will raise some of these issues. So you want to have a conversation. You're going to have a conversation on this with them. Contractual obligations. You've entered agreements with 5 persons. Have you been failing over time? Every single agreement you enter, you fail. Every single agreement you enter, you fail, and all of that. They will know that you're not, you're not good for it. And then we've talked about time of exit already, both for your partners, for your co-founders, for investors, and all of that. So that also. Next, I'll just mention. Maybe we'll skip the next slide because I've already mentioned them a little bit already. Next, I want to talk data privacy and security. And as much as this is a single when I was preparing when I was putting the slides together, I just got to this point and I said, see, I'm not going to use more than one slide for data privacy and security, primarily because this single slide explains almost everything around data privacy, right? And from the middle, you're already seeing data protection. We currently have a new Data Protection Act in Nigeria, the NDP, Nigerian Data Protection Act, which was signed in just a month ago or thereabout. So Nigeria is beginning to take data protection seriously. And that is even just for Nigeria. For most of us who are startups, we're looking at bigger spaces, right? And there is a data protection regulation that is, world over, that applies world over. So we want to be very careful who, the moment you start a company and you have users and you're onboarding users, you want to begin to think, I'm going to collect their names. As little as their name, sign up, sign in, sign out, subscribe, whatever the word you use to collect data. It doesn't matter whether you are using those data or not. If you begin to collect those data, whether you are a data controller, you are storing, you become liable. All right. So you want to get your data policy in place, one, and you want to be compliant. You want to be data compliant also. All right. In terms of privacy, in terms of protection, in terms of dissemination, data transfer, data use, who your data subjects are. All right. How you share those data with third party, because for some of us who will use integration softwares or who would partner. Remember, we talk about service agreements. Who would partner with other people and share information, customer or user information across several other platforms or with other third-party players. You want to be able to also enter data arrangements with them, those third party, as much as you enter data arrangements with your users. All right, you want to also what confidential issues, even for those of us who are not using who are not taking data digitally, right? What confidential information is communicated. Everybody who works with logic, for instance, knows that apart from the fact that you're a lawyer, every information that comes here, even if you see that, I don't want to use somebody here as an example, but Cynthia, please permit me to use you as an example because you're the safest person to use here, all right? Who will not sue me. But again, in case you decide to sue me, please, this is just for example and educational purposes. This is my disclaimer. This is for educational purposes.
Accepted.
I do not
Accepted.
anything I say the next 10 seconds, all right? So assuming what's it called, Cynthia kills somebody and comes to me, all right, to defend him or to defend her. That information is a prerogative of Cynthia or a conversation that is between Cynthia and myself. And where it becomes open to the law, all right, to the law, and no other person. And no other person. I'm not going to go and say, hey, Cynthia has. If you, I think lawyers are one of the most secretive people there is, because even in marriage, I'll be honest with you, right? Even in law, there's something called spousal privilege. They assume that okay, when you're married, it's not everything you keep from your wife. So, even though there are certain things you can divulge to your wife, which the law cannot require or third party cannot require from them. All right, but even at that, lawyers and secrets are like two peas in a pod. You can't separate them, and that is what is going to be with you as a startup. Data privacy is a primary. You will not put out somebody's data if there is no assurance. You will not share somebody's data if there is no assurance that the person you're sharing with would also be bound by that confidentiality, that privacy. Because at the end of the day, you keep a lot of persons, volatile. Data is volatile, so anything can happen, right? So from data collection, how you collect the data. As a matter of fact, it is not just all of this collection and distribution and keeping that matters. You don't just do them. You tell the data subject that you are doing them. You tell them how you are doing them. You tell them what is being done. You tell them where their data is being stored, where it is being transferred to, where it can be transferred to. All of this information should be available to them in your policy or data policy documents. And all of these things are things you should be thinking. All right. Next, we'll talk about is compliance and regulation, because we can't spend the entire day talking on data alone. If we can't, data is a subject, is a 1 hour, maybe probably 2 or 3 hours conversation in itself. So we can't sleep there. All right. Next, compliance and regulations. Now, this is a bullet point for us also. Regulations, startups are not startups generically. All right. Startups are industry specific, are regulated by specific industry. So you're going to, as a startup, you want to be sure who is regulating me. What happened to the likes of Chaka, Bamboo at some point, was it last year, was they got into a space, and we'll get to it in a minute. They got into a space where there is not much regulation yet, where there is regulation, but the regulations have not evolved to meet what they were doing. So all of the fights you were hearing that Bamboo this, Chaka this, all those investment platforms had at the point, was because they didn't know who they started, and not knowing who to regulate them. So they started. And that's the good thing about your work as startups, as founders. You start irrespective. It is my job, for instance, to be looking out for your interest, to say, hey, you are starting, don't worry. Either don't worry, go, I'll be protecting you, or don't go yet. Let us get these loopholes covered. right? So we have that job separation between the two of us, between you as a founder and me as a lawyer who aids the founder. I mean, the service provision business, even though currently we're trying to productize most of our services so that it's easy for um, our users and customers like you guys to be able to access it with less contact, right? And you want to look first at who is regulating your space so that you can begin to deal with those people. Next, you want to consider from those people the licenses and the permits you require. All right. For a startup who is in fintech, I keep mentioning fintech because it's one of the most popular spaces currently. A startup who is in fintech, you know you're going to approach the Central Bank of Nigeria for whatever reasons there is. Depending on the space you are, you're going to work with FCCPC, you're going to work with what's it called? The data, of course, it's not a given, it's something that you should know already. The data protection becomes a conversation you would have to have. The deposit money insurance, the list of spaces you have to engage with or government regulators you have to engage with are quite a lot. Some of them permits, some of them are easy, some of them are a little harder. So you want to approach all of those people. Next thing I want to point out here again is regulatory sandboxes. And these sandboxes, and this is a new thing that has been happening in the last 2, 3, 4 years in the fintech space or in the space or in the startup space generally, even before the Startup Act came up. In fact, the Startup Act itself, right, is not a complete document, but a regulatory sandbox. The Startup Act is structured in a way where you may not know what area of startups you are, or of startup you, or what industry you operate in, or what regulation should. Let's say you're bringing something very innovative we've not seen before. Nobody's doing it in Nigeria. Who do you approach? All right. The Startup Act is designed in a way, as with other regulatory sandboxes that have come up recently. The CBN has a regulatory sandbox. The SEC has a regulatory sandbox as well. The goal of regulatory sandbox is to say, hey, we are regulators. You are startup and founders. We don't want to fight. You see this beef within founders and regulators that they always, oh, no, we don't want them. We don't want that. If you have something that you think is not properly covered by regulation, or you want to do and you don't know where to go, approach us. We will put it in a controlled environment, try it in a controlled, better testing, as people who develop platforms and app do. We'll put in a controlled environment, try it and see what should and how this sector should be regulated. And that's the conversation around regulatory sandbox. So things like this have been going, and that's even how the Startup Act is set up in itself in some ways. All right. So you're able to approach regulator and tell them this and this is what I'm doing, and this is what I tend to achieve out of it. This is then both yourself and the regulator will build regulation around that sector. Next is consumer protection. When you're thinking compliance, I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues this evening just before this meeting, and the scope of FCCPC, for instance, Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, their scope is wide enough that everybody who sells goods or provides services is covered by FCCPC. All right. So you want to understand that as a service provider or as a product seller, what does the law says about my relationship with my consumer, with my customers? All right. And how does the law protect them? As consumer protection, you have to consider that so when you are producing, you don't produce something that will fail because government will come and tell you that is detrimental or dangerous to consumers. All right, whether it's a service, whether it's a product. Next is advertising law. You want to consider there's certain things you don't advertise. There's certain things, I know you are in the business of I don't know what startup that is not criminal that you want, but there's certain things that are both that may not be criminal but not moral, right? Certain things that are not moral, but there's even a way that ideal advertising should be. You can't lie. You can't tell me if you taste. Oh God, I saw one ad for, forgive me, there's I can't remember the name, but those guys that sell one herbal stuff on Instagram for it's like all this bubble shit thing, but they sell it on what's it called, pegs or so. I've come across it with all of these influencers advertising it part time, right? You promise all of your the lofty promises you make in your advert. If it's something unrealistic, if it's something you shouldn't even be advertising in that manner, right? If it's in a fair advertisement, you want to consider all of these things, and of course, AML CFT. This is big for people who are in the fintech space. AML CFT, anti-money laundering and combating financial terrorism, is what AML CFT is, right? Is a space on its own. That so when you hear KYC, some of the reasons is because of AML CFT, right? They want to be sure that you are not laundering money. You're a financial service provider. We want to be sure that this is not a money laundering scheme. We want to be sure that politically exposed persons are not using you. You'll see PEP sometimes in politically exposed persons are not using this to, flush money across, because it's an easy thing to do. That thing they call wash money. It's very easy for lawyers who are in this space know how to, but again, some persons will choose whether or not what kind of practice they want to. Yes, anti-briberies also, and then ethical issues around. You want to also consider ethical issues around the product or service you are working on. Next, I'm going to discuss about, which is, I think, probably one of the last thing, no, maybe close to the last thing we're going to talk about, is dispute resolution. Right? Dispute resolution. One, fight must happen. This is something that happens with all startups. Whether fight is happening between you and your co-founders, you and your investors, you and your users, fight is a thing that's very likely going to happen at almost every stage or certain stage of your businesses, of your startup growth, right? And some of the common conflicts would always be around corporate governance. Who has control? You and your co-founders are now fighting. You say this, you say X, you said Y, and this is the reason why you need your founders agreement, all right, or shareholders agreement at the beginning, right, or co-founders agreement, depending on whatever you want to call it. Who has control? What kind of corporate governance? What should we be doing? Back end, right? Then another fight that will come up a lot is contract disputes. Contract dispute between yourself and service providers, other service providers, if you're in the B2B space or you're doing B2B relations with people. Conflict between you and your investors, conflict between you and your co-founders, conflict between you and your users, conflict between you and regulators, and all of that. Then intellectual property disputes, who have what, when, and how. This is common with people who develop and do not protect the development. We talked about IP protection earlier, and do not take the necessary steps to protect. So all of this intellectual property dispute begins to come in, right? And one of the ways we can protect that, I hope I put it somewhere there. I don't think I did, but one of the ways we can protect, for instance, intellectual property disputes, is especially with agreements. I think I missed out one of those conversations where we're talking about the kinds of agreements that should be entered. One of those kinds of agreements is employment agreement, and some of the things that should be contained in your employment agreements are conversations around IP, who owns what, confidentiality. You cannot say, you say no, you see no evil, say no evil. You can't say anything about the business, the property, intellectual property. You don't leak it to competitors. And then there is a non-compete. For instance, this can be both with your founders and with employees. There are non-competes. You can't come in here and stay at my company for 6 months, and then you go and set up your own, doing the exact same thing we're doing. All right, you can use by contract limit all of those things. You can't. There's also the non-disparagement clause that you can add to say, hey, you can go if you want to go, but non-compete, you cannot fight us. You cannot do what we're doing in the same sector for a period of time. 2, you cannot spill, non-disclosure, non-disparage. You cannot go and be talking shit about us or bad about us outside, right? Because if you do, there are consequences, and these are the consequences. So common conflicts that will come up is contract disputes. I've mentioned IP disputes, issues around control and corporate governance for early stage startups. And the way to resolve it is, or complete resolution is basic negotiations. Talk, all right? Again, it's a relationship. Talk. How far you're stepping on my feet? How do we resolve that? Please take your leg off. And for stepping on me, you buy me Coke. We resolve our issues. If we cannot one-on-one talk, we bring industry players, or particularly people who can mediate, lawyers or mediators who are who understands the industry, and or sometimes mediators don't need to be lawyers. Could just be experts or people who are has gone farther in the space than yourself to say, okay, this is the issue we're having, resolve our issues for us, between co-founders, between founders and investors, between, resolve those issues. Sometimes a startup messes with you. I remember when Piggyverse started, I had an account with them and they messed with me, and I got angry and sent them DMs. They did not respond in time, and I called them out on Twitter. And then DM that they've not responded to, I called them out on Twitter. They entered the DM and start saying, oh yeah, sorry, how do we resolve your issues and all of those things? And then issues were resolved. That's negotiation. All right. If I had started fighting them, which it was getting to, and I had sued them, for instance, they probably would go and call approach me again. Or if I refuse, call somebody and say, hey, see, this thing is not that big. Let's settle this issue. All right. And if that does not work, then we arbitrate. All right, we bring out a professional third party, whether whether arbitration would usually happen with the operations of law, not operations of law in that sense, but with regulators or the law involved per se. But arbitration can also happen outside that in certain instances, but primarily it is governed by law to say, okay, these are this. And the reason why is because most arbitral award, whatever is agreed upon, should be final in most cases. So yes, even in your contract, you want to state how conflict will be resolved, negotiate, mediate, arbitrate, and then if it looks like we cannot solve our problems with that way, we can now go to court and wear gloves and fight. All right, and that's where litigation comes in. And if you have questions, please be putting up, because we're going to just do a quick recap now. I'm going to do a quick recap now, and then I'll take specific questions that are specific to all of the things we've been discussing. And the recap is: one, formation of your company, structure your company in a way that is investment friendly, because as a startup, that's what you're looking at down the line. Not just investment friendly, but also regulatory friendly or regulatory compliant. It is regulatory compliant. You want to be able to set up your company. If you're creating a bank, you don't name it a name and then you go and register a 1 million naira share capital company. All right, that's not how it works. There is a specified share capital you want to use for that. Otherwise, 2 to 3 years down the line, if you're a lending company, for instance, I know of a lending company who started with I think they started with 1 million share capital, and then they approached the lawyer who didn't know the space, and then the lawyer to increase their share capital. But the lawyer was not very diligent enough to say, hey, this is your space. It is this amount of share capital you need. Until they called me in to do something different. And then I identified, I said, see, let me look at your work. Let me even see your entire company. What are you doing? And then when they told me a couple of things they were doing, even before the legal audits that we usually would comment, I said, no. For what you're doing, you need X amount share capital. So you have to increase again. And they were not happy because the previous person did not tell them all of those things. And yes, so you want to know how the structure is regulated, how the area is regulated, what kind of company you should be running. Of course, everybody here should be running at least a limited liability company. And if you're not, as a startup, especially in the sense of the word startup, and if you're not, you might want to begin to do what we call a reorganization or re-registration from a business name to a limited liability company. Next, we talked about intellectual property protection. And on this conversation on intellectual property protection, we talked about trademark. First, we talked about intellectual property being intangible properties. We talked about the type of intellectual property being intangible properties, but not your idea. Your idea that is still in your head is not intellectual property. Anybody can have ideas in their head. That idea must be communicated first and then protected when need to. please, if you have questions, I can see somebody asking, please just put it down. I'll answer all of them. And then we talked about trademark. We talked about trademark for the kind of things trademark you can trademark, from brand name to brand design to all your branding materials, any identifiers or unique identifiers. We talked about copyright and how that you can trademark, you can copyright your software, you can copyright codes, of course, to the extent that it is. You can copyright works, literary works, movies, music, and stuff like that. We talked about patents, that are inventions and patent and designs, inventions that you can patent. And we talked about trade secrets, and trade secrets are primarily protected by contracts. All right, so everybody knows the chef in Chicken Republic was what I used. The chef in Chicken Republic knows that the recipe for that food is not something that he's going to talk about. And then we talked about contracts generally, some of the clauses, some of the kind of contracts that you should be looking at as a startup. And we talked about some of the clauses that should be in those contracts or in some of those kind of contracts. Again, contracts are sector specific. So while I can provide you with the general things that certain contracts, especially within the startup space, should have, each sector will influence what kind of terms, what kind of contract you should have, and what terms should be in that contract. And we talked about fundraising also, a little bit about it. We talked about the kind of fund you can be raising now and the kind of contract you can have when raising those kind of funds, the kind of things that should be in those, you should consider to be in those kind of contracts. We also talked about data. Data is king. So when you are harvesting data, whether you are harvesting it or not, or you're controlling, whether you're a data controller, data storer, you're provided you are working with data, taking data from data subject, transmitting it, or what have you, you should have your data policy in place, and then those data policies should be compliant, and you should also file your what's it called, your compliance as they go, your data compliant filings as it goes. We also talked about compliance and regulatory issues. Understand the sector you are. Know who regulates your sector. You can always speak to a lawyer about all of these things. Again, pay your lawyer, please. If you cannot pay a lawyer, make sure your lawyer is your friend, and they can show up for you when you need them to show up for you. Otherwise, please pay them. If you are in the space where you cannot pay them, there are quite a number of materials out there that can help. Follow Logic. We're putting out a couple of things even soon on our socials on how to navigate some of these spaces. So yeah, please. I hope that is not advertisement or unfair advertisement. All right, but again, it's just a space to help, because primarily some things that you would have paid for, you would see them for free, right? And then dispute resolution, we talked about that. Yes, the house is open. I'm going to probably just go to the questions.
So before you continue, we only take a very few. I'm seeing lots of questions coming in.
I'll relate what kind of questions we take, when and how, because
yes, I think I'll just let you know the one you should take, because some of the questions that that you guys are asking will be answered in upcoming workshops, like the one of taxes. That's something that an accountant will put you through properly, and we have a session with a renowned accountant coming up really soon.
All right, let me quickly taxes, because
so maybe you want to say something on taxes.
Yeah, just something basic, right? Okay. Tax is handled. Tax for every company is handled by legal and tax division. So whether you're an accountant or a lawyer, begin to set up your tax structure. Those two parties would have to work together sometimes. However, one of the major questions that happens with respect to tax, or come up with respect to tax, is I don't want to be paying tax. Now, if you understand the business structure you operate. Remember, we talked about business structure earlier. If you understand the business structure you operate, the kind of industry you are in, and what your revenue or turnover is, you will know if you are. First off, tax is something that everybody is mandated to pay. But at what time do you need to start paying tax, right? Once a regulator says this is the time, then this is the time. We have our Finance Act that is newly what's it called? That I think Finance Act is just a couple of months old. We have our tax laws that are being reviewed by the Finance Act. We have the Companies and Allied Matters Act, and you recognize that for businesses that are small businesses in quotes, you have to be turning over at least 25 million naira before you are going to pay company income tax. However, if you're a business name here, or you're just you're an enterprise, understand that you pay personal income tax as an individual. That business is seen as you. The regulators see you as that business and that business as you. So it will require you to pay tax as an individual, right? But for company income tax, you have to get to a particular revenue or turnover threshold before you start worrying a lot about taxes. All right. So if you're not turning 25 million or 20, I think it's 20 or 25 million for small businesses, then company income tax may not necessarily be the conversation. Now, again, you can always check the laws. If you don't know the laws, I'm pretty sure that your lawyer friend who you have or your lawyers would be able to walk you through that. But again, you can always ask questions when you
so you can make sure you follow logic.
The tax conversation down the line,
follow
and
logic.
please, I should join that class.
All right. So I want us to take a question on, I mean, the logistic industry, how much share capital is ideal to incorporate it on? At what point should a lawyer be involved?
Come again, please.
I mean, the logistics industry, how much share capital is ideal to incorporate, and at what point should I involve in a lawyer? Yeah.
I would ask you what you mean by logistics industry, because logistics varies. If you are in the day-to-day logistics, consumer logistics industry, then 1 million share capital. And 1 million share capital doesn't mean you spend 1 million. Please note that. If you don't know that, please check Logic. There's a place where we explain Logic on Instagram. There's a place where we explain share capital and how it works, right? 1 million naira share capital will be enough for you to incorporate, at least for a start. However, logistics is beyond consumer logistics or retail logistics as we know it. All right. Freight and forwarding is an aspect of logistics. Airline carriage and all of those things are part of logistics, right? So if you are going to do, if you're going to be hauling things, you have containers, you are Maersk or you are DHL. You're not going to register 1 million. You're not going to register a company with 1 million naira share capital. The requirement is, I think, either 500 million or 2 billion. I'm not sure which of them now, right? For freight, when you start bringing freight and forwarding, airline services and all of those things into it. All right. So yeah, and then when is the good time? The good time is the moment you start thinking to set up a company. That's a good time to register, to bring a lawyer into it. All right. That's a good time to register. That's a good time to bring a lawyer into it. At least, even if not for everything, just to help you set up the company and set it up the right way, and then you can go and operate, or you can go and start operating.
All right. Thank you. So I think this would be the final question, because there's a question here on what funding. Wisdom already talked about it, the different kinds of funding and when you should take that up. And okay, maybe we should take the question on how can you protect, that's trademark. I think we already talked about trademark, right? And maybe you can just talk about the process of trademarking, you know, how someone can go about that and protect his name and product. Yeah.
The trademark industry is regulated by the Department of Trade and Industry in Nigeria. You trademark by applying. All right, contact a lawyer. Again, I like to say contact a lawyer because, not because I'm fishing for business. Again, I would mention that very clearly, but because you're properly guided, right? But if you can't afford one, walk up to the trade department or the department and ask them. But again, all you need is for requirements. All you need for the trademark is what you want to trademark, who owns it, so the details of that trademark, who will own the trademark, right? Who will own the trademark, and the mark itself, and then an authority to your licensed agent, which is the lawyer you will see eventually contact. All right. So just reach out to a lawyer. Prices will differ from lawyer to lawyer, but yeah, reach out to somebody and tell them, hey, I have this brand, I want to protect it, I want to trademark it. Let them even tell you if this is trademarkable, because some words are restricted, some words you cannot, some things you cannot trademark. All right. I can't wake up today and say I want to trademark wisdom. Wisdom is a generic name or word. John, as my surname is a generic name. I can't trademark it. It's not my own. It belongs to the world. All right. But certain things that are unique, remember uniqueness, and then you can apply to trademark them.
All right. So I think our final question for the day. So someone was asking about your business email. That's why I had to take them all the way to this page. So if you want to reach out to Wisdom, this is how you can reach out to him and send it a note. Okay. So final question for tonight is there a book for startup, like a law book for startups? But yeah, you were actually talking about this yesterday.
We talked about this yesterday.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think this is enough time for us to release this. So yeah, is there a book? At least, is there anything that they can hold on to, maybe go and just read up?
All right.
Sort of prepare them. Yeah.
Cynthia, this is funny because we just had this conversation literally yesterday. This is funny because when I and Cynthia started talking about this class, or the possibility of me handling this class, I had no thought of I've been doing this for a while, so I've been building materials around it. I've been writing a book on startup, on a guide for startup. Some of those books are sector specific. I have one complete now that is on branding. All right, I have one complete that's on branding, and not branding from a brand professional point of view, but from the legal point. All right, but again, sometimes these things are not out yet. All right, so until they're out, there's not much we can do. For now, what I can do is either rush up and provide one for us, or you know what, my email is here. If you need a copy of a basic guide for startup, send me a mail. I'll put you in a wait list, and the moment it's out, I'll let you know. Right? I'm trying as much as possible. The reason why it's not out yet is I'm trying as much as possible to control cost, to ensure that when it's out, it's not pricey, that people cannot afford it. All right. So yeah, reach out.
An ebook.
Yes,
yeah.
It's going to be both, but then I probably will release the ebook first. I like hardcopy books, so I probably
it's obvious. I mean,
it's big. The problem is it's big, right? So I'm trying to condense it to what people who don't like to read can consume. And my style of writing also requires me to write in simple English where people can easily understand it. People who are not lawyers can easily understand. I'm not writing for lawyers, and that's the truth. I'm writing for users, not lawyers. Lawyers can use it because they're in the space. In fact, most probably they'll use it more because they'll buy it more. But I'm writing particularly for people who can, because they have these documents, they cannot afford a lawyer. This document can guide them to get where they want to go. So yeah, once it's out, please just send an email to Logic, and you'll be told that you've been added to waitlist. The moment it's out, you get a notification and get a link. Whether it's free, whether it's not free, you would be aware. If I can do free, I'll do free. If I cannot do free, please, you pay some. God bless you.
All right. I don't. Can you guys hear me? I didn't hear you.
This is fine. No.
What?
No, I'm just looking at the picture on your screen. Is it fine? That's a fine young man.
So,
I'm kidding you.
So guys, this has been such a robust class. I mean, really, really robust, and we have to definitely. I want you guys to show how much you enjoyed this class. Just put it in the chat box. You know, how amazing was this class? Show your expression, show your gratitude. You know, what did you take out from this class? You know, let's give that honor back to Wisdom, who took out time, even extended beyond the planned 1 hour, to teach us on this topic. See, if there's anything you've taken out of it, I think maybe I'll even mention that some points about understanding that whenever you're conceptualizing any idea, you're dealing within an industry and the regulation. So from the very beginning, you start thinking about it, and that's the essence of the startup school, right? To put you through that entire process and make sure that you're well guided, so that you don't run off spending a lot of money, a lot of time doing something that wouldn't work. So in the past, we've had students from all over the world listening and learning. 100 plus students who have, and guess what? You don't need to have a startup to be a part of the school. You don't need to have it. If you're still in the process of trying to figure out if you should do this thing called startup, then you should be a part of the school, because then you can be prepared when you fully decided. And you can already see that some people, most of the people who attend the class have never attended any form of startup school. The very popular startup school that everybody knows in the ecosystem is the YC startup school. But the thing about it is that it's not tailored to the African ecosystem, right? It is not tailored. So you have a lot of things that are very far-fetched. So if you come to this class, you're meeting with other students like you who are doing stuff. And you can see 0 to 1. That means they started within 0 and just 1 year old startup. So make sure you're a part of this, and it cuts across every industry. And that's the essence of the school. It's the basics, it's the foundation. Once you have the foundation laid, you can then spring up and enjoy the rest of your startup journey. So this is something that has continued, and it will still keep going. And guess what? It's free. Like, it's free live classes that you have to do between 3 to 5 days. It's really free. You get to enjoy these things, and your life is changed. Thank you so much, Wisdom. I appreciate you doing this for the founders, and they're already showing that in the class, right? Someone was like, I was about to pay for 1 hour session with a lawyer, and boom, you saw the class. Can you imagine that? So make sure you pay that session to to Wisdom, right? Go chat him up, let him help your ministry, so that you don't make the wrong mistakes. Because I'm also a founder, I started a company called the Aboki Africa, and 2-3 years down the line, a fintech company came into the scene and named themselves the Aboki Africa, right? And so we're always getting phone calls from people, accusing us of doing fraudulent activities, saying, "Oh, we're taking them." We're like, no, we're a shoe repair company. Like, we're in the leather industry. We have nothing to do with fintech. And so, because, like he said, we've already trademarked our name, we've trademarked the logo. Like, the first year that we already started making money, we trademarked. And I have to really point it out. That's the first day we started making money, not when we're still in the conceptualization stage. When we knew that this was going to be an entity, we registered it, we trademarked the name, and it didn't take long after they had to change their name from the Aboki Africa to Grey. So I'm sure you guys already know Grey Finance. That's what they are now. So this thing can really help in the future, especially if you know that you're going to be building something that will be remembered for many years, and you want to build something that will last, for a long time. So make sure that you're a part of the class. September is when the new cohort will be, and the recorded classes is not going to be available to you guys. They're available to the students of SDC Startup School. That is something that we're pulling together for them. So all the classes we've had, all the workshops is for the students of SDC Startup School. So you need to register to get this recorded. All right. Take good care of yourselves. Any last words, Wisdom, to the students? Any last words to them?
Okay, last words. We're all startup founders here, all right? And if there's anything I'll leave with you, is this, and it's the fact that your company rises and falls on you. So whether you have employers or co-founders or what you will carry the weight. You will carry the weight of compliance more than anybody. All right. There is no use running when you will fall. So as best as you can. I know the argument or the conversation often is, I don't have the a founder reached out to me recently and said I should do something very little for them. And I said, all right, how about all of these other things? And I did an audit, because I'll ask you, let me audit especially if you're already a little big. And then she said, no, she's not interested in all of those now. And all of those things are actually what will crumble her. All right, she's doing a great work, but those things. So it isn't necessarily about what. Let your lawyer advise you what is important. All right. First, where to start from. All right. It may not be that may not have all of the money that you need to get certain things done, but you can start from what is primary. So what is most necessary at the time. All right. Because failure or success will rise and fall on you, you have to take the initiative. Sometimes lawyers will reach out to you, maybe, but most times they don't. They will sit down and wait. Reach out to them, ask for help. You mustn't always have money to do everything. I know we're bootstrapping. Well, what's it called? Founders. I'm doing Logic. I have a couple of other things that will come out soon. And as a matter of fact, a lot of you who are in the tech space will benefit very largely from it because it's tech focused, right? But then again, reach out to people, ask for help. Sometimes you reach out to me and I say, all right, I'll do it for you for free. Other times, I'll do it at a reduced price. All right. So all of those things, sometimes you'll find the information already provided, and I can tell you, okay, see where you need to be looking. All right. So yes, take law serious if you really want your business to get to the where your startup to get to where it should get to. All right. Have an amazing day, guys. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Reach out to me, yes, on social media. I think I saw somebody reach out on social media, Logic Africa. Reach out, Logic Africa email. I think it was up earlier. So yeah,
Yeah.
reach out. You responded to.
Thank you so much. Get a lawyer friend. I mean, my registration, my trademark, everything was done by my friend. That was how I was able to scale, right? So be wise when it comes to law. Be wise from the very beginning. All right, guys, thank you so much. And that's a wrap for today's class. Yeah, thank you so much, Wisdom. Thank you so much, guys, for being a part of the class.
It was good being here. It was good being here.
Awesome. So let's do it again. Let's do it again. So guys, be on the lookouts. We're gonna have our next class. So follow me on social media at Cynthia Ichito, right? And you get the announcement for when the next class. I'm not gonna tell you what the title is. You find out. You find out when you see the announcement. But just know that whatever comes out, I'm a founder, so I know what you guys need, and I'm also an advisor, so I know what you guys really need, right? So it's gonna be really good. All right, then. Have a wonderful evening. Take care, everyone.